Hello everyone, so this has just arrived, Blood and Steel Rules by Firelock Games, and it's only a couple of days since I put up a video talking about how I was anticipating these rules and I was expecting not to be terribly impressed by them. The reason for that was that, as I tried to explain, they set out, and it says on the back of the cover here, Blood and Steel is a skirmish level game set during the reign of Queen Victoria. It focuses on combat at the fringes of larger battles and is based on the same mechanics as Blood and Plunder and Blood and Valour. So, yeah, as I was trying to explain, I don't feel that skirmishes, especially the ones that took place on the fringes of larger battles, really shape themselves in the way that rules like this, and in particular Sharp Practice 2, which has been compared to this set of rules, in the way that they demonstrate. You simply didn't have skirmishes that where the sides were composed of tiny little mini armies with specialist units of routine regular troops, other units of cavalry, units of artillery, units of light infantry. Didn't happen like that. Skirmishes were far more homogeneous, and that's one of the reasons why I don't particularly like Sharp Practice 2, and I was a bit dismayed to hear a lot of the reviews of this rule comparing the two rule sets. But I'll tell you what, I've had a very, very cursory look through these rules. I literally only had them in my hand for about an hour or so. And I'll tell you what I have read here that I find reassuring. It's the author's notes. So the paragraph in here reads, "We would like to acknowledge a few points regarding historical accuracy. First and foremost, this is a game. It is intended to have historical flavour and is far from a simulation of combat in this time period. We know, for instance, light infantry tactics call for skirmishers to fight in smaller groups of 2 to 4 soldiers with proper spacing instead of the unit size and coherency restrictions these rules present, or that the game allows unique units to fight alongside others who may not have been in such close proximity within the battlefield." That's exactly the point I'm trying to make, and the fact that they recognise that point makes me feel a lot better about this set of rules than I do about Sharp Practice, where the Too Fat Lardies actually kind of stress the fact that they like to play the period and not the rules. That's completely the opposite to this. The design, of these authors, that they're saying they have designed a set of rules to play an enjoyable game. So my feeling is now I'm a lot more comfortable with that. They're simply not the type of game that I would want to play if I were a serious kind of student of any particular conflict. So I don't see any reason why, if you are heavily into something like the Franco-Prussian War or the Crimean War or whatever war that took place in this period, you would want to play these rules knowing that they don't accurately portray the conflict that you're particularly interested in. If, however, you've just got a collection of 60 to 100 figures for a particular army, and you want to get them on the table and play with them, then this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. Not something that I want to do, but I can see it being an absolutely ideal club game, and a game to, a set of rules to have fun with. So, I like that. I appreciate what the authors are saying, and it also says another thing that I would never do, but they're allowing you to do. We also acknowledge we have written these rules in a way that allows players to wreak havoc with historical continuity. For example, there is nothing stopping you from playing a game with Maori warriors fighting against Cuban revolutionaries at the end of the 19th century. While it's not our goal to play games like that, we are fully aware that others very well might. Yeah, so again, I know people do that. I mean, particularly with ancients, people are almost compelled to fight their kind of samurai against Aztecs and all this kind of thing with some sets of rules. Again, they're not the sort of games I like to play. But it's the honesty, it's the fact that they recognise, that you're not meant to take these rules too seriously, that makes me a lot more comfortable with them. And it kind of now occurs to me that there are conflicts in this period where I can use these rules and where I don't have to play fast and loose with historical accuracy. In particular, I'm thinking of my Maasai army, which I've never been able to play with because they're individually based figures, and you would think at first glance that they were suitable for Congo, but Congo doesn't actually match the Maasai way of fighting or the structure of their forces and so on. So you can't really use Congo for it. But this would be absolutely perfect. So I'm thinking I'm going to use these rules. Haven't read them at all yet, so I don't know the game mechanisms or anything yet. But you try and have a go at playing a game between my army of Maasai and a sort of column, say, led by Burton and Speke, the two explorers who went off in search of the source of the Nile. Burton and Speke leading a column of Zanzibari auxiliaries who they employed because they had to cross over Zanzibari held territory. So Zanzibaris and maybe some native contingent against a force of Maasai, and I've got plenty enough figures to do that. So I think that's the first thing I'm going to try these rules out on. And then the other thing that it was occurring, to me that I could do was my Indian Mutiny figures, because in the Indian Mutiny you had far more disintegrated kind of forces, particularly on the British side. A lot of the time the conflicts took place between forces that had just been put together very hurriedly, sort of random groups of survivors from previous massacres and stragglers from various columns and survivors and so on. So I think, you could put together a fairly kind of hodgepodge British force, and it would still be, reasonably demonstrative of forces that maybe took part in conflicts in the Indian Mutiny. So maybe after I've tried the rules out on the Maasai, I might try out for the Indian Mutiny. But for both of those, I'm going to have to compose my own force lists, as it were, because they only have lists for they have only armies for 6 particular conflicts, none of which, other than the Anglo-Zulu War, I have figures for, and my Anglo-Zulu War figures are all sort of multi-based and so on, not really suitable for skirmish level games. But having said all that in kind of semi-praise of these rules, then I will just point out some things in here that have already kind of caught my eye that I'm a little bit kind of critical of with all rules when I go through them at first, first perusal. So yeah, thinking of putting together a force, and I've already come across a few, not too many, typos and misprints and so on. So it says here, force list, to create your own unique force, choose a force list and consult the building a force rules on page 43. Well, the building force rules aren't on page 43, that's page 43 here. The building force rules are on page 44. Tiny things like that. It's things that I think should be spotted, before they publish rules. You shouldn't need to put errata out, as soon as rules come out. Another one here. Right. The game can also be played with larger or smaller models. Some adjustment may be necessary, but please keep in mind that the author's intent was for it to work well at the 28mm scale. These models should be mounted on 20mm or 25mm round or square bases for individual foot soldiers, and 25 by 50mm oval or square bases for horse riders. Well, there isn't such a thing as a 25 by 50mm square. It's a rectangle. Something I saw on or heard on another person's review was that they were praising the quality of the figures, the sort of eye candy. I would sort of maybe not go as overboard as they were on the standard of the figures and the quality. I mean, this is a classic example. They're fairly, old-fashioned figures, very stiff poses, gloss varnish. It almost looks like they're very shiny. At any rate, you can see where the guidon's been cut out and a kind of white border for the paper left around the flag and so on. So they're not, they're not demo quality figures by any right. Some of the pictures are nice enough, but you got an MDF building there that's just been glued together. There's been no attempt to paint it or enhance it in any way. So this is one of the reasons why I don't like MDF. You see these kind of notches with the tabs sticking through them. So yeah, I wasn't as impressed as this other person was by the quality of the photography. And the final thing I noticed here that just caught my eye immediately was that these Zulus here are War Games Foundry figures, and you can see the really sort of odd looking assegai that was several of them have got. This is completely wrong. What the person who glued these figures together has done is glued Maasai spears from War Games Foundry onto Zulu figures, and the Maasai had a very, very different shape of assegai and so on. So lots of things like that just get the sort of pedant in me going. But in terms of having a bit of fun with these rules, I'm quite looking forward to it now. I've never had an opportunity to play with my Maasai, even though I've got a fairly large collection of them now. So that's the next thing I'll be doing after I've got my head around the rules. And other conflicts in this period that I thought maybe Ian at Bucko's Piffle YouTube channel, you might be interested in these for your 28mm planes Wars figures because you never really found a set of rules that satisfy your requirements. But you know, keep an eye out and see how I get on with these for my Massa, and you might think the rules are worth trying out yourself. Anyway, that's my very first immediate reactions to this set of rules, and I'll give you an update on how I get on in the future. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.